My mom said, "You're being too sensitive. It was just a joke," after my uncle called me a failure at dinner. I just got up and left. 2 days later, she found out why her birthday party was canceled. I, 32M, just walked out of family dinner after my uncle called me a failure. My mom said I was overreacting. She's about to find out exactly how much of a failure I really am. The fork was halfway to my mouth when my uncle decided to ruin everyone's evening. We were all gathered at my parents' house for our monthly family dinner, the kind of obligation that feels more like a prison sentence than quality time. My uncle sat across from me, already 3 glasses deep into the wine, his face flushed with that familiar arrogance he wore like a second skin. He started talking about his son's recent promotion at some tech company, how the kid was pulling in 6 figures and just bought a house in the suburbs. Then he turned to me with that smug expression I'd learned to hate over the years. He asked what I was up to these days, but the way he said it made clear he already knew and just wanted to twist the knife. I told him I was still working on my business, keeping my voice neutral. That's when he laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a full-throated laugh that made everyone at the table stop eating. He said I'd been working on that business for 5 years now, and maybe it was time to admit I was a failure and get a real job like his son. The room went quiet. My younger sister stared at her plate. My dad cleared his throat, but said nothing. My mom's face tightened, but she didn't speak up either. And my uncle just sat there, grinning like he'd made the wittiest observation of the century. I put my fork down slowly. I asked him to repeat what he'd just said, giving him a chance to backpedal. He doubled down instead, saying someone needed to give me a reality check, and he was just being honest. Family is supposed to tell you the hard truths, he claimed. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor loud enough to make everyone flinch. My mom finally spoke then, her voice sharp with that particular tone she used when she thought I was embarrassing her. She told me to sit down and stop being so sensitive, that it was just a joke and I was making a scene. I looked at her for a long moment. I asked if she really thought it was just a joke. She said yes, that my uncle didn't mean anything by it, and I was being too sensitive like I always was. She said this in front of everyone, validating his cruelty with her dismissal. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. My dad finally found his voice and asked where I was going. I told him I was leaving and that I'd had enough of being treated like the family disappointment just because I chose a different path. My uncle tried to say something else, but I cut him off. I told him his son might have a house in the suburbs, but at least I didn't raise my kids to be as miserable as he clearly was. Then I walked out. My mom called after me, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel from anger and humiliation. That was on a Saturday. My mom's 60th birthday party was scheduled for the following weekend. She'd been planning it for months. One of those elaborate affairs at an upscale restaurant with 40 guests, a custom cake, live music, and enough decorations to rival a wedding. She'd been talking about nothing else for weeks, showing me pictures of centerpieces and asking my opinion on menu options like I actually cared. Here's what my family didn't know. That business they all loved to mock wasn't failing. Far from it. I'd started a consulting firm specializing in digital transformation for mid-sized companies. For the first 3 years, it was brutal. I lived in a cramped apartment, worked 18-hour days, and survived on ramen and determination. My family saw the struggle and assumed I was drowning. They never asked for details, just made assumptions and occasional cutting remarks disguised as concern. But in the past 18 months, things had changed dramatically. I'd landed 3 major clients, hired a small team, and my revenue had grown exponentially. I wasn't just comfortable anymore. I was successful by any reasonable metric. My yearly income now exceeded what my uncle made, and definitely surpassed what his golden child son earned. The other thing my family didn't know was that I'd been paying for my mom's birthday party. All of it. She'd complained months ago that the cost was overwhelming, that the venue required a hefty deposit and my dad's retirement income made it difficult to swing. I'd offered to cover it, anonymously, through my dad, so she wouldn't feel embarrassed. She thought my dad had some investment payout and agreed to let him handle everything. I'd put down the deposit, paid for the catering, arranged the music, ordered the cake, and handled every single detail. The total was close to $15,000. My mom had no idea I was behind any of it. Sunday morning after the dinner incident, I woke up still angry. My phone had 7 missed calls from my mom and a string of texts telling me I needed to apologize to my uncle for being rude and disrespectful. Not one message acknowledged what he'd said to me. Not one person had defended me at that table. I spent the day thinking. By Monday morning, I'd made my decision. I called the restaurant first. I explained I was the one who'd paid for the reservation and I needed to cancel everything. The manager was apologetic about the late notice, but I'd paid enough that they were willing to work with me. I told them to refund everything to my account and cancel all arrangements. The manager confirmed it would be handled within 48 hours. Then I called the bakery and canceled the custom cake. I contacted the musician and the florist. One by one, I methodically dismantled every element of the party I'd arranged and paid for. Each cancellation felt like removing weight from my shoulders. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. I just waited. Tuesday evening, my phone exploded. My mom called 6 times in a row. When I finally answered, she was hysterical. She asked if I knew what had happened, her voice shrill with panic. Everything for her party had been canceled. The restaurant claimed the person who made the reservation had pulled it. The cake was gone. The music, the flowers, all of it vanished. She was crying, saying her birthday was ruined and she didn't understand what happened. She thought maybe my dad had done something wrong with the payments, but the restaurant said everything was refunded. She asked if I could help her figure it out, if I could use my business contacts to maybe find a new venue on short notice. I asked her if she remembered Saturday night. There was a pause on the line. She asked what that had to do with anything. I told her everything. I explained that I'd paid for the entire party, that I'd been the one covering all the costs she thought my dad was handling. And after watching her defend my uncle calling me a failure and dismissing my feelings as oversensitivity, I decided to cancel it all. She went silent. Then she started yelling. She said I was being petty and cruel, that I was punishing her for something my uncle did. She couldn't believe I would ruin her birthday over a stupid argument. I stayed calm. I told her it wasn't about the argument. It was about years of being treated like I was less than everyone else because I didn't follow the traditional path. It was about being mocked at family gatherings and having nobody stand up for me. It was about her choosing to protect my uncle's feelings instead of her own son's dignity. I said I was done funding celebrations for people who didn't celebrate me. She tried to guilt me. She said I was her son and I owed her more respect than this. I asked where her respect for me had been on Saturday night. She had no answer. My dad called an hour later. He was quieter, less angry. He asked why I hadn't told them about my success, why I'd kept it hidden. I reminded him that every time I mentioned my business, someone made a joke about it. I told him I stopped sharing because nobody actually wanted to hear about my wins. They just wanted to feel superior about their own choices. He admitted they'd been unfair. He said my uncle was drunk and said stupid things, that I should know not to take him seriously. I asked why I should be the one who had to tolerate disrespect just because someone was drunk. He didn't have a good answer for that either. Wednesday came and my mom was still trying to salvage something. She called asking if I would reconsider. If she apologized, would I restore the party? I asked if she'd apologized to me yet for Saturday. She said she was sorry I felt hurt, but I needed to understand that family sometimes says things they don't mean. That non-apology told me everything I needed to know. I told her the party was staying canceled, and she could explain to all 40 guests why. She started crying again and hung up. My sister called that evening. She'd stayed quiet at the dinner, but now she wanted to talk. She said she understood why I was upset, but thought canceling the party was too far. She said Mom was devastated, and our extended family was gossiping about what happened. Everyone wanted to know why the party was off. I asked her why she didn't say anything when Uncle tore into me. She admitted she should have, that she was a coward for staying quiet. But she said 2 wrongs didn't make a right. I told her I wasn't interested in being right. I was interested in being respected. If that made me the villain in the family story, I could live with that. Thursday afternoon, my uncle himself called. That was surprising. His tone was different, more subdued. He said he might have been out of line at dinner, that he'd had too much to drink and didn't mean to hurt my feelings. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from him. I asked if he was calling because he felt bad or because my mom was pressuring him. He hesitated too long before answering. I told him we both knew the truth and hung up. By Friday, the extended family had gotten involved. My aunt called saying I was being immature and breaking my mother's heart over nothing. My cousin sent texts saying I was throwing a tantrum like a child. Everyone had an opinion about my behavior, but not one person had reached out when my uncle humiliated me at dinner. The day before what would have been the party, my mom showed up at my apartment. I hadn't expected that. She looked tired, older somehow. She asked if we could talk in person. I let her in. We sat in my living room, and for a while neither of us spoke. Then she asked me to explain why I'd really done this. She wanted to understand because nothing made sense to her anymore. Her son, who she thought was struggling, had apparently been successful for years. The son she thought she knew had just destroyed her birthday celebration out of spite. I told her I'd show her something instead. I pulled up my business accounts on my laptop. I showed her the revenue figures, the client contracts, the growth charts. I walked her through what I'd built over the past 5 years while everyone assumed I was failing. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the numbers. She asked why I never told anyone. I reminded her of every family gathering where someone made a joke about my career choice. Every time someone asked when I was going to get a real job. Every comparison to my cousin or uncle's son or whoever was doing conventionally well. I told her I stopped sharing because my success didn't fit the narrative they'd already written about me. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said she hadn't realized it had been that bad, that she'd thought it was just normal family teasing. I asked her if she'd like someone calling her a failure at dinner and being told she was too sensitive when she objected. She finally broke down. Real tears, not the manipulative crying from earlier in the week. She said she was sorry, actually sorry, for not standing up for me. She admitted she'd been so worried about keeping the peace and not making waves that she'd let me get hurt. She said she understood now why I'd canceled the party and she didn't blame me. I told her I appreciated that, but an apology after the consequences didn't undo the damage. She nodded, wiping her eyes. She asked if I'd ever forgive her. I said probably, eventually, but trust took time to rebuild and I needed space right now. She asked if there was any chance of salvaging her birthday. I told her the party was gone and wasn't coming back, but if she wanted to have a small dinner with just immediate family who actually respected me, I'd consider coming. She said that would mean not inviting my uncle. I said that was exactly what it meant. She left looking thoughtful. Saturday came, the day of the canceled party. My phone was surprisingly quiet. Sunday morning, my dad texted saying they were going to have a small dinner that evening, just my parents and my sister, and I was invited if I wanted to come. No uncle. No extended family. No drama. I showed up with a card and a reasonable gift. We had dinner at a local restaurant, nothing fancy. It was awkward at first. My sister tried to make small talk about her job. My dad asked careful questions about my business. My mom mostly stayed quiet. Halfway through the meal, my mom spoke up. She said she'd been thinking about everything all week. She realized that she'd spent so much energy trying to keep everyone happy that she'd forgotten to protect the people who actually mattered. She said she'd called my uncle and told him he wasn't welcome at family gatherings until he could treat me with respect. She'd also told several relatives who'd called to complain about me exactly why the party had been canceled. My sister added that some of the extended family was shocked to learn how successful I actually was. Apparently, my uncle had been downplaying my business to everyone, making it sound like I was barely scraping by. Mom had set the record straight. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me was still angry, but another part was relieved. This was what I'd needed all along. Someone in my corner willing to stand up for me, even when it was uncomfortable. My dad asked about my business, genuine curiosity in his voice for the first time in years. I told them about my clients, the contracts I was negotiating, my plans for expansion. They actually listened. My sister asked thoughtful questions. My mom smiled, and I could see pride there mixed with regret. It wasn't perfect. One dinner didn't undo years of dismissal and mockery, but it was a start. As I drove home that night, I felt something shift. The anger that had been sitting in my chest since Saturday dinner started to ease. Not disappear entirely, but loosen its grip. I made my point. More importantly, I'd established a boundary. My family now understood that disrespect had consequences, and I wasn't willing to fund or attend celebrations where I was treated as less than. Update 1. It's been 3 months since everything went down. I wasn't planning to update, but enough has changed that I thought people might want to know how things evolved. My relationship with my mom has improved slowly. She's made genuine effort to rebuild trust, checking in regularly and actually asking about my business in ways that show she's listening. She's even referred a potential client my way, someone from her book club whose company needed exactly what I offer. That contract ended up being worth $40,000. My dad and I meet for coffee every couple of weeks now. He's admitted he stayed quiet too often over the years because confrontation made him uncomfortable. He said watching me walk out that night made him realize his silence had been a choice, and not a good one. My sister has been great. She apologized repeatedly for not speaking up at the dinner and has been actively supportive since. She tells anyone who'll listen about my business success, which is both sweet and slightly embarrassing. The uncle situation is more complicated. My mom kept her word and he wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. This caused some friction with extended family, but my parents held firm. He eventually sent me a long email that was closer to a real apology, acknowledging he'd been jealous of my independence and took out his own dissatisfaction on me. I appreciated the honesty even if it didn't immediately fix things. What's interesting is how the family dynamic shifted overall. Other relatives started being more careful about their comments, not just to me, but to each other. My younger cousin recently told me she'd been thinking about starting her own business and was afraid of family judgment. After hearing what happened with me, she felt braver about pursuing it. I've been mentoring her, which has been rewarding. My business continues to grow. I hired 3 more people, and we're projecting to double revenue this year. The success feels sweeter now that I don't have to hide it or downplay it to avoid mockery. I still haven't fully forgiven what happened, and I'm not sure I need to. Some things leave marks. But I've accepted that my family is imperfect and capable of growth, same as anyone. The difference now is they're actually trying, and that effort matters. The best part is I no longer dread family gatherings. I set clear boundaries about respect, and people actually follow them. If someone crosses a line, I'm comfortable leaving, and my parents back me up now instead of asking me to tolerate it. Someone asked if I regretted canceling the party. Honestly, no. It was harsh, but it was also necessary. Sometimes people don't understand the weight of their actions until they feel consequences. My mom's 60th birthday became a lesson in respect rather than a celebration of surface-level family harmony, and in the long run, that was more valuable. I threw my mom a proper birthday dinner 2 months later, something smaller but meaningful with people who'd shown they actually cared. She cried happy tears that time, and they felt real. Life isn't perfect, but it's better. And I learned I'd rather have a smaller circle of genuine support than a large family that treats me like a punchline. That's worth more than any party. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.